Hello, everyone. Now, as you know, Michael Jordan fans are the worst sports fans of all time. And one of the many reasons why is because these people really believe that Michael Jordan has the #1 NBA peak of all time. So let me tell you how this one goes. Some Michael Jordan fans, what they'll do is they'll go, well, hey, if you want to figure out who's the #1 NBA player of all time, you take their best years and you put it together and then you figure it out and then you rank them. And so they have concluded that Michael Jordan has the #1 peak of all time. Now I'm going to explain to you why this is ridiculous. Here are the reasons why, in no particular order. First, they are disrespecting all of the other NBA people. Next, they are dismissing all of the other NBA people. Next, when they claim to respect the game and then they disrespect the game, they are contradicting themselves. Next, when they claim to love the game and then they dismiss the game, they are contradicting themselves. Next, Michael Jordan fans have a history of always trying to find a way to make Michael Jordan the #1 NBA player of all time. So that right there shows you that they're not reliable. Next, understand why Michael Jordan fans are saying this. It's because they're just trying to find a way to make Michael Jordan the #1 NBA player of all time. So that right there shows you that they're not reliable. Next, how do Michael Jordan fans explain that lots of the players that Michael Jordan played with don't agree with them? Next, how do Michael Jordan fans explain that lots of the players that Michael Jordan played against don't agree with them? Next, how do Michael Jordan fans explain that lots of the owners, general managers, coaches, and other NBA people that Michael Jordan played for don't agree with them? Next, how do Michael Jordan fans explain that lots of NBA Hall of Famers, lots of NBA legends, lots of NBA scouts, and lots of NBA experts don't agree with them? Next, how do Michael Jordan fans explain that Michael Jordan doesn't agree with them? Next, since lots of these people don't agree with them, why do Michael Jordan fans sometimes reference one or more of these people for one or more topics? Next, how do Michael Jordan fans explain that usually the only people who think this are Michael Jordan fans? Next, if this was the other way around and they were an NBA Hall of Famer or some other NBA person and they found out that there was a younger NBA fan who wasn't there when they played, who doesn't have that much tape of them, who isn't an expert on the past NBA and so on, and they found out that this younger NBA fan said this thing, they wouldn't agree with that fan. Next, if some non-Michael Jordan fan said this thing and it went against Michael Jordan, the Michael Jordan fans wouldn't agree with that non-Michael Jordan fan. Next, Michael Jordan fans have a contradiction. They always ask people who disagree with them if they were there when Michael Jordan played, if they went to his games, if they saw his games live on TV, and so on. And yet, they don't ask themselves these same type of questions when it comes to lots of other NBA Hall of Famers. If they did, they would know that it would go against them, and they wouldn't come to this kind of conclusion. Next, how come Michael Jordan fans don't say this kind of thing for some other NBA players? Next, how come Michael Jordan fans don't say this kind of thing for some other players who played other sports? Next, how come Michael Jordan fans don't say this kind of thing for some other people and some other things when it comes to other things outside of sports? Next, how come Michael Jordan fans don't say this when it comes to who they rank as the #2 NBA player of all time and the #3 NBA player of all time and the #4 NBA player of all time and so on? Next, how come Michael Jordan fans don't say this when it comes to who they rank as the #1 player and the #2 player and the #3 player and so on when it comes to other sports? Next, how come Michael Jordan fans don't say this when it comes to the #1 person or the #1 thing or the #2 person or the #2 thing or the #3 person or the #3 thing and so on when it comes to other things outside of sports? Next, Michael Jordan fans are putting other NBA players in a lose-lose situation. If they have a peak that is as good as Michael Jordan's or better than Michael Jordan's, they dismiss it. If they have a peak that is not as good as Michael Jordan's, they hold it against them. Next, how do Michael Jordan fans explain that lots of other people have said this about another NBA player? Next, I want you to think about something logical. Is it logical to assume that Michael Jordan has the #1 NBA peak of all time? Next, Michael Jordan fans have a contradiction. They love to go by analytics, But nowhere in analytics does it say that Michael Jordan has the number one peak of all time. So if they go by analytics, that is a contradiction. Next, Michael Jordan fans have a contradiction. They love to use the MVP award. But if Michael Jordan didn't win the MVP award when he was in his peak, that means the MVP award is not reliable. So if they go by the MVP award, they are contradicting themselves. Next, Michael Jordan fans have a contradiction. If Michael Jordan did win the MVP award when he was not in his prime, then that means the award is not reliable. So if Michael Jordan fans go by the award, they are contradicting themselves. Next, if Michael Jordan has the number one peak of all time, how do Michael Jordan fans explain that Michael Jordan didn't win the MVP award every year when he was at his peak? Next, if Michael Jordan has the number one peak of all time, how do Michael Jordan fans explain the fact that when he did win the MVP award, he didn't get all the votes when he was in his peak? Next, if Michael Jordan has the number one peak of all time, how do Michael Jordan fans explain that when he didn't win the MVP award, he didn't always get enough votes to be close to first place when he was in his peak? Next, when it comes to everything I just brought up about the MVP award, you could also apply this to pretty much all the other things where people vote or where there is an award. Next, use some common sense. In any sport, when they rank players, they always go with the player who brings more to the table. And you know, there are lots of players who bring more to the table than Michael Jordan. So you know that there are lots of players who had a better peak than Michael Jordan. Next, when Michael Jordan was in the NBA, there was never an NBA season where he had the number one NBA statistics. Next, Michael Jordan does not have the number one NBA statistics of all time. Next, there is no factual way to figure out when a peak starts. Next, there is no factual way to figure out when a peak ends. Next, even if there's a way to know when a peak starts and when a peak ends, there is no factual way to know who has the number one peak of all time. Next, there is no fact to prove that Michael Jordan has the number one NBA peak of all time. Hey, please subscribe, and if you disagree with me on something, you can go on my program and show me your facts on whatever you disagree on. If you want to go on, let's set it up. Send me an email. The email is right there in the description section. Thank you.